thank you everybody for coming out on this rainy afternoon. From the successful standalone features such as GOLDSTONE and SWEET COUNTRY to the Mystery Road film franchise and accompanying television series, producers Greer Simpkin and her amazing team are establishing franchises that are increasingly connecting with the international marketplace. Producer Greer Simpkin and screenwriter Cody Bedford join us today in this moderator discussion where we explore the unique history and methods behind this highly creative production studio who are exporting Australian-spun franchises to the world. Can we just get a sense, who in the room is Australian and who is not? All right, represent. Okay, just wanted to see how we need to curb the colloquialisms. So Greer, for people in the audience who haven't seen Mystery Road, do you want to explain the premise of the TV series?
Sure. Actually, is this working? Can you hear me? First of all, I did want to, it's something that we do in Australia, but there's so many Australians here anyway. I wanted to acknowledge the Lenape people that are the people whose ancestral lands we're standing on today. So Mystery Road, I don't know if there's a lot of Australians here. Have a lot of you seen it, the TV series? Yeah, okay. So we're just really interested as a company in developing our IP. I think it's something that when you're a small independent production company is really necessary. And the TV series was spun out of two feature films, one called Mystery Road and another called GOLDSTONE. They were created by our business partner Ivan Sen, who's an amazing Indigenous filmmaker. He's an auteur, he writes, directs, he shoots, he edits, he writes music. He's pretty amazing. And he's a filmmaker and a feature film person. He doesn't want to make a TV series. But so he developed he's an amazing filmmaker, and he had films like Beneath Clouds that was won the Silver Bear at Berlin, and another film called Tumula that was in certain regard in Cannes. But I think what Ivan did, which was really clever and which we've taken on and we're doing a lot now, is by creating this outback detective character and using Western tropes. He used genre to really draw an audience in, but then there's a Trojan horse. It's actually saying something about Australia. And I mean, there's universal themes as well. I mean, I'm always saying Mystery Road, the series, could easily be made in America or Canada. The same story could exist here. You could have a Native American in the lead. So the character of Jay Swan he's an Aboriginal outback detective. He walks between two worlds. He's caught between worlds, I should say. The white cops don't trust him because he's Indigenous, which is terrible. And the Indigenous community don't like him because he's a sellout, he's a cop, he's a coconut. He's a loner, he doesn't listen to authority, he does what he likes. So that character is really appealing. And so that's where the films came from. Shall I talk about the feature film? Did very well, Mystery Road, and then a while after its theatrical release it was shown on the ABC, and it was shown on Australia Day. For those of you that are American, that's a kind of, I guess, a combination of July 4th and Thanksgiving maybe, and it's in the middle of summer. It's a controversial day, but I won't get into that. But it's hot, everyone's out, but it went out on the ABC and got 1 million viewers, and a lot of young people watched it. And we were like, oh my God. At the time, I actually wasn't part of the company. I worked at the ABC as a deputy head of drama and comedy, and actually it was almost our best performing drama of the year, even though it had already had a theatrical release. So we knew there was something there, and so we developed the series. Ivan wrote the original outlines, and then we brought in the writing team, which comprised of Cody and Stephen McGregor, who's a beautiful Indigenous writer. He wrote Sweet Country, which showed here last year, and won many awards around the world, and two other writers. So anyway, it's a long answer.
No, please continue. I do want to talk to Cody and get her experiences on how she joined the team. But first, did we want to show maybe one of the clips so people can get a feel of what the series looks like?
Yes. So the series, just quickly, what we did is 3 layers. We're about to shoot the second series, and we're doing the same thing. There's a contemporary mystery, and then there's another layer of a crime 15 years before, and then there's a crime from the past, and that speaks in this series to the impact of colonisation on Aboriginal people in Australia, and that's the kind of Trojan horse. I'm not going to reveal anything, but what we did is we set the series between the two films. So the first film, he's like this. He's a very good-looking man. I shouldn't objectify him, but he is, and he's really charismatic. The second film is set a long time later, and he's an alcoholic and he's lost everything. And so we've set the series in between, and so we're making sure that we can do a couple of series before we find out what drove him to become the character he is in the feature film. And so we've linked the story of the series to the original film. So this clip, Aaron Peterson is playing Jay Swan, and it's his ex-wife Tasma Walton, and it's a tour de force, I think, for Tasma, and kind of references what he did in the previous film.
Great.
Hello, another one, thanks. Oh, look out! Here he is. Legendary. Detective Jay Swan, everybody. What?
You married?
Hey, you know, I remember when you used to call me about. It's always married. It's very official.
Come on, just
No. I'm not done anymore. Alright? You two, you want to arrest someone? Arrest that bird-faced bitch right there. I had $5 underneath this plant. I went to the loo, came back, it's gone. I seen her looking at it.
listen, Mary, let's offer this place.
Oh, yeah, no, right. Just one. No. You don't have time for this. No, you never have time for family.
We haven't been family for some time now.
Because you gave up on us. Because we got too hard for you. You gave up on your own daughter. You didn't ask her why she's here. Eh? I know you don't want us around here, so why don't you go home? Go home where? Look at the shit that you leave behind. We're stuck in it. And we've got nowhere else to go. No, but you know, you're the big man. You're the big hero. You saved the day. We're left with 6 dead fellas. And there's 6 angry families all looking at us. You get a pat on the back, don't you? Crystal, she gets a punch in the head. Have you thought about that, Jane? Oh, I mean, you talk about responsibility in front of your boss. Fuck me, Jay. What about responsibility to us? To your own family? I know you didn't care about us. You wouldn't care about Jay's wife. Oh yeah, that's good. That's it. Go and walk away. That's all you have to do. Walk away, Jay Swan. That's all you can ever do.
I should have mentioned, because apart from all the other threads of the story, the series is about family. You know, there are 3 families in the story, and when she talks about the dead bodies, because he's like a rogue cop. He goes rogue, and he killed a whole lot of bikies in the film.
Actually, that sort of ties into something you said to me on the phone, and it was the comment that even though Mystery Road is an Indigenous story, it's not marketed that way. What did you mean by that?
Well, I mean, I just think it's just it's my, I'm the producer of it, but I do think it's it's got a lot of compelling characters, and it doesn't need to be, we don't say this is a white series or anything. It's just great characters. It's a mystery, and it really worked in that way. It wasn't ever defined like that. It was just, we had some of the best Aboriginal actors in Australia in it, and it just, audience came to it.
All right, Cody, this might be a good place to bring you in, mate. A bit of backstory for everyone here. Where did you grow up in Australia, and were there many young female writers like you trying to make a go of it?
I grew up in Western Australia, north of Perth. Perth is probably known as one of the most isolated cities in the world. I think they sort of sell themselves as. I don't know if that's a selling point. But I grew up north, 4 hours drive north of Perth, so in Geraldton. So I don't think I ever thought I'd be sitting here in New York at all, especially, you know, when I left school. I always knew I wanted to tell stories, but I didn't know the avenue to get there. And so I used to, like, make my own films and write down my own stories that my nana kept. When I was packing up my nana's house after she passed away, sadly, she kept all my old short stories, which was really nice to see. I'm from someone who's from regional Australia to be brought into a project that is very relatable for me, especially because not only am I from Geraldton, but my family are from the area that this is set in eastern Kimberley, which for me to get to from Geraldton, 4 hours north of Perth, is a 2-day bus ride to the top of Western Australia, and it gets very hot and smelly on that bus, which I had to do many a times. So it was very special, I think, and almost like fate that I was brought into this.
You actually wrote the second episode for this series, is that right?
Yes.
How did you come to be in the writer's room?
For me, I worked at ABC as the Australian Broadcasting Corporation as an assistant. And I remember when Mystery Road, the film, was sent in, and because I knew I wanted to be a writer, I always knew I wanted to be a writer, after work I'd always sneakily stay back and read all the scripts that were submitted, and Mystery Road was one of those, and it was honestly the best script I'd ever read. And when Ivan submitted the TV idea, I went, I'm working on that show. You didn't know that. Then life went on, and 5 years later, or whenever it would have been 5 years later, I was at a function, and Penny Smallcombe, who's the head of Indigenous at Screen Australia, introduced me to Greer and said, they're in need of a note taker in the room. And I said, well, I love Westerns and I'm from Western Australia. Please hire me. And yeah, I got in as a note taker, and suddenly I'm voicing my opinions because I'm a bossy black woman. And and suddenly Michaeli and Greer both agreed. A spot became available in the writers' team and asked if I wanted to do it, and I think I went yes in record time. It wasn't. She didn't even have to get the question out. I just sort of did a little dance in my room and went yes.
And I can say one of the reasons that we did that, apart from your great story sense, is how passionate you were about the younger Indigenous female characters and the female characters. You wouldn't, and you on the series too as well, you won't let us off, right? Some of us can go back to our, the usual ways of thinking, and you pull us up on that.
I'm that girl in the room that when I say something, all the men, and I can say that because we're all a family, the writers, and they look at me and go, oh, here she goes again, because I'm like, a woman wouldn't say that, a black woman wouldn't say that she wouldn't. Tasma Walton, she's one of my favourite actors, and she's from Geraldton, by the way, so the same hometown as me. So that scene there was written by Stephen McGregor, who I think is one of the most brilliant Australian writers ever, but don't tell him I said that because we have a rivalry going. Just those moments for Mary. Mary is my favourite person to write for. She is someone who is not really seen on Australian TV, and very character-driven. I'm always drawn to character-based stories, and for me, I love writing her. I'm currently finishing off my draft, I promise, Greer, for the second series episode, and she's been my favourite to write for. I've probably given her more time than the others, which I hate to admit, but, you know.
And I think it really works because as a woman watching it, it really resonates.
As someone who binge-watched this series in the last 24 hours, I can agree. You touched on an interesting point there, and that is the tension when... I think one of the best things about this series is how authentic the characterisation feels. And I'm wondering, is there tension in the room between wanting to be really authentic versus conceding certain points to, you know, for the bigger creative picture or to make a bigger political point about something?
For my experience, I think all of the team wanted to say something authentic, and it comes from a real place. I can't write made-up emotions, made-up plots, or made-up stories from a character's perspective. I have to have some truth when I write. So I think we all definitely came on board wanting to say something through the characters, and it was a thrill that audiences connected with that.
And I would just add, though, that when we made Goldstone, actually Luke Buckmaster, who's a Guardian critic in Australia, said, and it was something that really resonated with me, he said, because always we set it in some windswept, isolated town, you know, and it's a made-up town. And he got that, and he said, this is a country, not a town, and that country is Australia. And that's what I really wanted to do all the time, is just make it slightly more heightened so that even though we shot in the Kimberley, it wasn't a place, it was a made-up place. And so I didn't care so much as a producer about making sure the cop uniform was exactly how it should be if you were a cop in the Kimberley, right? You know, Rachel Perkins, who I must acknowledge, who's the director of the series, who did an incredible job and is an amazing woman. She's an incredible filmmaker. She's also an activist. She's from a very prominent Aboriginal family, and she was really in the authenticity much more than me, and probably that's what I was talking about. Sometimes I go, I don't think it really matters that there's, you know what the rule is about crossing a border, you know, but that tension is probably quite good, but I wanted it to be more of an allegory about Australia a lot of the time. Yeah.
Real characters.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Made up place.
TV tropes, yeah.
Is it time for another clip?
Oh, yeah, what was the next one?
So I think maybe we're going to take a look at Judy Davis confronting...
Yeah. So, I mean, again, what we tried to do in the series was have, you know, it's a regular crime series, it's a mystery, but, and I think this scene was written by McGregor, wasn't it? And
he writes everything, basically.
And it's a really powerful scene because it's actually saying something, I think, about Australia.
You know the country, Larry. Yeah. You've been hiding in here, out there.
What story are you trying to spin now?
I'm just looking out for him.
Oh, right, you looked out for me. Just tell them what you know, Larry. If you didn't do anything wrong, then you won't get in trouble. Well, I did nothing wrong, and I've got 10 years anyway.
Yeah, you're the real victim, aren't you? You rape a 13-year-old girl, you leave her dying on the side of the road. But you're the victim.
It wasn't me.
She named you incorrectly.
Why did you do it? Just like the old days, eh? You're gonna shoot the black fella.
I wouldn't be shooting you because you're a black fella. I'd be shooting you because you're a rapist.
So this, I think, is a really nice illustration of the point you first brought out, which was that this is sort of a genre hybrid. You've got all the tropes of a classic Western, which sort of draw the audience in, but then you also have that underlying social commentary about Australia's past and present. Yeah. What were you hoping to try and say in this particular scene?
Well, in that scene, it's, you know, the Larry character, who's, by the way, is a convicted paedophile, beautifully played by Wayne Blair, who is here with Top End Wedding. He's a director and an actor, and he's won awards for this performance. I guess it was just, talking about, just like the old days, shoot a black fella. I think it, just in one line, it kind of says a lot about Australia's past. And I guess, can I just say that is something that we as a company try to do, get the audience in, but then actually try to say something.
Great. Actually, while we're on Judy Davis, she is fab, as usual. I think we'll all agree. She plays a senior local sergeant, in the series, Emma James. What do you think appealed to her about this particular role?
She came to this because of Rachel Perkins,
the
director. Mainly, they had a very good relationship, and she also loves Aaron Peterson, who plays Jay Swan, and she loves Wayne Blair. So it had nothing to do with us. And God, it was amazing to work with her. She was just incredible. She wore a cop uniform. That uniform is the only costume she had. She wore it for the 54 days of the main shoot in unbelievable heat in the Kimberley. Sometimes I say 45 degrees, but the makeup artist says, Greer, it was often 50 in my car. So it was really, really, really hot. And she never complained. She was just superb.
Where was the writer's room? Was it on location?
I wish. No, in Sydney, or sometimes Alice Springs.
We did a week in Alice Springs when we finished Sweet Country.
That's right.
Brought everyone up there.
And I remember the day Judy came in for a reading, and I was shaking because Judy's also from Perth. I'm just going to name all the people from West Australia. And, of course, she's a legend who's just gone out there. And for her to come in, I think I was shaking when I shook her hand and went...
We were all shaking.
Yeah. Hello. Please like my script.
She read your script
that
day. We did a read-through.
We did a read-through, and she just nailed it from a cold read, and she brought so much more than I ever expected to a script, and is an ultimate professional, and you couldn't ask anything more for an actor.
And I guess it's kind of rare to have an older female lead character.
That was something I really, really wanted to do, and we're hoping to do that in the second series as well. I worked at the ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, for 12 years, and in the drama department, and I think I kind of know that audience. And although we made this for an international audience as well, but a lot of drama viewers around the world are women, and certainly at the ABC, they're older women. And it was actually Ivan that created the character of Emma, and she was always an older woman. So, but it was really great to cast. And in fact, we had many great Australian actresses who were a bit older in the series.
That leads very nicely into a couple of questions about appealing to an international audience. Were you ever worried that this wouldn't translate to an international audience?
At the time we were developing it, there were all those amazing shows around the world, like Trapped in Norway and whatever it was in the Arctic Circle, and there seemed to be this trend that people were going to these really amazing places, but the stories were very universal. And so I really, really wanted to showcase the Australian landscape, and it cost us so much money to go to the Kimberley. It's kind of mad. David, my partner, who's my business partner as well, has made a couple of films up there. We know it very well, but it's kind of mad. It's cost the same as to fly to Europe from Australia. So but I think it was worth it. The landscape's really majestic, and we were honouring that, and it is a cliche, but it was a character. And it did really resonate with international audiences. It was on BBC4. It was the top show of the week, top show every week, of the week. And but what was really fascinating for me was how much the Australian audiences, I was like on Twitter and Facebook the whole time reading their responses, and a lot of Australian audiences really responded to that landscape as well, because I think a lot of people, David Jowsey, my partner, often says that a lot of Australia are on the eastern seaboard and they have their backs to the desert, and we don't really spend a lot of time there. Not many people have been to the Kimberley, so it really resonated in Australia as well.
Yeah, to add to that, I mean, I was just so proud to see a boab, simply a boab tree. I mean, that area is my traditional homeland. My family have been there for 100,000 years. So to have that displayed to the world was something very special to me, but also in a story I'm really, really proud of, and actually says something about Australia and makes an audience think. And I never doubted that Australian audiences wouldn't like this. And I never doubted that an international audience would also relate to this, because we all kind of seem to have a history of colonisation throughout the world. So those damn English people just got everywhere, didn't they? But
the Spanish.
Yeah, and the Spanish. But I must say that the conversations that when I go back home, they're all so proud, and they're all still talking about it and still pestering me. When's Mystery Road Series 2 going to come out, and can I be the lead? And I say, I have no power in that. I give him Greer's number, so...
Shall we take a look at a clip that really shows off the landscape?
Gonna ride a horse. That hat's gotta be good for something. I reckon they head west. What do you think?
Do you think this would have worked if you'd chosen to set it in a different, less expensive location?
Yes.
No.
It just wouldn't have been... We really wanted it to be very cinematic. Ivan is a beautiful cinematographer, and he did Goldstone and Mystery Road, and we actually shot them in outback Queensland. Goldstone we shot in a place that was so remote. There was no water, no mobile phone coverage, no internet, no fuel, no food. We all slept in tents. I remember I just left the ABC, and I went to France to Series Mania. I don't know if anyone knows that TV festival. And I met this French guy who ran it, and I said, just sort of gaily said, as we were going up the Eiffel Tower to a fancy restaurant, "Oh, when I go back, I'm going to be living in a tent." And all night he was just looking at me. And at the end of the night he said, "It is very hard for producers in Australia." He thought I'd left the ABC and was so poor I was living in a tent. Anyway, so sorry, I've gone really off topic. But so we actually shot the series like a feature film. I feel like so comfortable in that space. So we didn't do the traditional blocks, and we really spent a lot. We had a second unit. We had a time-lapse unit. We spent a lot of money making it look beautiful. And so I think audiences do respond to that. But the story, I think, was good enough. It could have been shot somewhere else. But anyway, we're going back again. Spending a whole lot more money. This time we're going to Broome. So this time it's going to be coastal and mangroves and up in the Kimberley again, but on the right on the other side. The Kimberley, I don't know if this is actually true, but it's about the size of Europe, but it's got about 25,000 people in it. So it's pretty amazing. I think it's really special. I just love it. But this time we have where the red Pindan dirt of the desert meets the aqua sea. It's really beautiful.
We're going to watch one last clip quickly, and then maybe we'll grab a couple of questions from the audience. But I wanted to ask, did you guys work or shoot with the local community at all while you were up there?
Absolutely.
You did, yeah.
We hired 300 or 400 extras that were mostly Aboriginal.
Mostly my family, probably.
We used a local company, all Indigenous, to do the construction. They weren't film people. It was a bit of a risk, but it was really important to us. The people that did traffic control. We're all Indigenous people, a lot of Indigenous companies up there, and we worked very closely with a beautiful arts organisation up there, and they did our behind the scenes. And what this is the beginning. This is one of the time lapses. Every episode had a time lapse. I'm one of those people that's really impatient about title sequences. I hate them. And if I've seen them more than once. And so we did a different title sequence for every episode, which is a time lapse which relates to the story that you're going to see in that episode. And this was Rachel Perkins' idea. The time lapse was written into episode 1, but it was her idea to bring the local women into the scene, and they perform an authentic mourning, like a MOUR mourning ceremony when someone's died, and it was really special. And this really shows the authenticity, I think, of the series.
No one would know anything about it, would you?
All right, so we're about nearing the end of our time, but does anyone have a burning question they'd like to ask? Can we grab a mic up top?
Yeah, there's one up there.
Oh, you've already. Great, thank you.
Oh, it was absolutely stunning, everything. Who was the actress, the young girl that was getting the smoke blown into her face?
Her name is Tasia Zalar.
Is she an actress or is she...
She is an actress. She's a beautiful actress, yeah.
I think I've seen her before.
Yeah, she's great. Well, Darlene here made a short film called Bluey that won a lot of awards all around the world, didn't it? It's toured everywhere, and that's the first time I saw her in your film. Yeah.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your well-deserved success. It's wonderful, and it's great to have you guys here. Mystery Road's a really great example of the increasing fluidity between features and television. So I think, there's so many creators in the room. I want to be able to encourage people that you can do that. But were there any lessons or challenges, Greer, that you did moving between those worlds?
Yes, because in a feature film, you can be more languid, and certainly Ivan's films are, and they're very cinematic and they're quite slow. And the series is still slow, but we had to drive a lot more plot than you would normally. This was the first TV series we produced. We'd done a lot of films. So that was a real lesson for me. It's kind of great, though, because you've got a proof of concept, right? So everyone knows exactly what they're getting. And we're doing it again and again. Our film Sweet Country that we mentioned was here. We're writing a sequel to that, again based on the real stories that came from that film, but from the female perspective. And we just finished shooting today, actually, a sci-fi in Hong Kong and the Gold Coast in Australia. That this is Ivan's next film, and we're definitely going to make a TV series out of that as well.
In the writers' room, I remember David was sitting there and made a point of, after we were plotting out the story, he said, "Can we please make sure we put in some of those Ivan-esque moments that he's known for?" And if you've seen Mystery Road, he has these beautiful shots. I'm all for breath in film. I'm definitely for breath in series, and I think I hope we really did justice to that. I kept reminding myself that as I was writing the script, to refer back to the film of these Ivan-esque sort of voices and feel and tone.
To honour him, really, because it's his creation.
Do we have time for one more? Just down the front.
Hi, being from the Caribbean, your ability to maintain authenticity is very encouraging to me. And my question is, with the global appeal, and you have BBC4, what other territories are interested and have what obstacles, how did you manage that? If you have anything lined up in other territories, where can we watch it? We
have a great international distributor, All Three Media from the UK, who are amazing. I love them. So it was on BBC4. It was on Acorn TV here that you can access through Amazon. I think they're replaying it right now. It's going to be playing in Canada. It's going to play on Arte in France and Germany. It is selling all around the world. I can't think of where else, but we didn't have to deal with that. It did get into Series Mania. It was in competition last year there, and it was at the Munich Film Festival actually, and at Banff. So it did have a bit of an international festival release as well.
All right.
Through writing, I always make sure there's an authentic voice behind all the characters, but in particular, the Indigenous characters for me on Australian TV in particular have never really been treated well or depicted well or authentic, that we're always made to stand on a cliff with a spear. And for me, that I've not stood on a cliff with a spear ever. So for me, it was about bringing I'm always passionate about cultural authenticity, but also bringing it what it is now. Culture is always evolving, and I feel like white Australia, white international people always want to put Indigenous people into this box of you cannot move from this, spear holding, cliff dancing kind of place. But actually, there are police officers, there are Indigenous screenwriters like me, or they're, doing modern things. We're not living in tents, that's for sure, because I don't like the air, to be honest. I like eating French food. So it was very important to me to also show the very real modern experience of Indigenous characters, and I always kind of push for that in writers' rooms and not to make it we're all so noble. And I think I'm talking to a lot of diverse writers and directors here. We've all experienced that same thing of I put in a script and the first response from the networks is, white audiences won't understand this. And I totally disagree. As a black fella, I've been understanding your shit for ages, so it's about time you understand mine. But also doing it in a very, very together way. And I think there were white writers in the room and there were black writers in the room, and it was such a lovely experience of giving. I'm often put in a position where I'm always giving. It was such a nice thing for an exchange to happen, and that really happened in this writer's room, and I think it really reflects that. Not that it's all about the writers, but it is. And I think it shows in the end, and I'm so proud of the team. I'm proud of the team we've got now, even though we're missing our Michaeli, who really as the head writer, drove the first series. We've got in a different head writer, Blake, who's just as passionate about telling these stories, but telling it in a very respectful way and letting me actually tell and use authentic dialogue, even though when I first handed in my script, the first note was, Cody, you've got too many fucks in there. Can you please take out those 100 fucks? Because I got a little too authentic, I think. Had to take them out for the audience. I didn't mind that because obviously I want a lot of people to see it and we should deserve a good rating. But I think for diverse voices out there, our stuff is relevant and our stuff should be seen. And I'm going to plug Miranda's film, Top End Wedding, that is being shown tomorrow night. And that shows, again, another sort of... It's not a cliff-standing Aboriginal. It's actually a romantic comedy featuring Indigenous characters. And those stories are really important to me because it shows that we're not just this one image that keeps getting put out there by white filmmakers. We're actually taking control of our own stories.
And on that note... I was going to ask you to join me in thanking them, but